Well, hello folks, and welcome to episode 202 of Retro Power Uncut. And we're going to start in the fabrication shop as usual. And we're going to start with Project Portofino, Jaguar XJ Coupe, where work's progressing in a couple of areas. There's a couple of little deviations from that, one of which Matt is working on at the moment, but I'm going to let Cal elaborate a little bit more on what's going on there. So Matt's come away from what he was doing, and what he was doing was lead loading. He'd started the lead work. There's a whole sequence of events going on, trying to work out one job interlocking with another. And for reasons I will explain, he couldn't continue with the bonnet. So he's moved on to the lead work, principally on the roof, which is the front corners of the roof, and then the rear, what we would call a C pillar. There are only two pillars on the car, so it's technically a B pillar, but it would generally be referred to as the C pillar, the back pillar. That is a separate pressing on the XJ Coupe, and there is quite a large, long leaded joint. I think I'm guessing they used the same roof pressing as a four-door car, but then cut two sections out the back of it and made two smaller pressings for the rear pillars to try and keep the tooling costs reasonable. I assume that's how this was done anyway. So I think the roof pressing would be the same as a four-door, that's a guess, as a short wheelbase four-door, that is. So yes, that is quite a large leaded joint, which I assume is why the cars originally had vinyl roofs. Now, there's a popular myth that, and it may be myth, it may be fact, I don't know, that the reason the XJCs had vinyl roofs is that all the shells were done in one quick run, and then they were all put outside for storage, and it made the roofs rust. However, I'm fairly sure that's not true. What I would say is much more true is the fact that because of the massive leaded joint on the rear of the roof, it was very, very hard to get the quality control on the paintwork sufficient in a reasonable time scale and make the body shells sort of down to cost. At which point they decided actually a vinyl roof was a good way of solving that problem. The lead work could be fairly rough and ready, and the vinyl roof would hide the sins. Obviously we're not vinyl roofing the car, so we need to make sure there aren't any sins to hide. So Matt has started the major sort of background lead work on the back. He's got the near side roughed in and all rough shaped, all put to shape with I've forgotten the name. I'm trying to remember the name of the wooden object for shaping the lead, and I've totally forgotten what he'd call it now. But he's basically shaped the lead roughly to shape on that side, and he's done the front corners. And next step will be the other back corner, and to finish off the roof section of the near side. As I say, he's moved on to something else at the moment. And then Tom has been working on the boot lid. And I must do a shout out here. You will see in the background in the workshop, with a bit of a gantry obscuring it slightly, the Stacey's Metalwork Machinery banner. Long-term relationship with Matt at Stacey's Metalworking Machinery. He's done us some very good deals on machinery over the years, and I've mentioned him a few times in the past because he's a great chap. Any metalworking machinery stuff you need, go on his website first and have a look. He's a great guy to deal with. He doesn't sell rubbish, and he has a lot of skill himself in fabrication. He has worked on some seriously impressive stuff in his life, and consequently knows what works and what doesn't. So he is a very useful chap in that field, and he helped us out with some rolls because I'd totally neglected to remember that we're a bit short on step rolls for our main bead roller. We tend to butcher the step rolls to do other jobs, and we're a bit short, and in doing the boot lid, Tom needed to put around about a 5mm step joint all the way around that. Now we can do that on the Pull Max, however it tends to leave the edges a bit wavier than the bead roller would. Matt helped us out at Stacey's very quickly with a quick overnighted set of 5mm step rolls for the bead roller, which is also from Stacey, I hasten to add, and an extremely good bit of kit. The electric conversion kit that he does for his main, I've forgotten the model number now, but the main bead roller that he sells, if you look on his website, the electric conversion kit that he does, which is something that he puts together, is an extremely good. It is so controllable. We've talked about it in the past. past. I think we've even done a little separate video on that, but it is an extremely good bit of kit. It's super controllable. It's got very good torque from the motor right down to really low speed, so it's a really good bit of kit. I'm not going to waffle on any more about it now, but any metalwork kit, see Matt. Doing me a little plug for him there, but he's a really good guy, very good friend as well. So yeah, really good man. Yeah, so Tom's got the that rear section of the boot lid done. It needed all of the inner reinforcing frame remaking, hence the need for the step rolls. He's remade the edge of that, so that now we've got a good edge to put the new outer skin to. He's made the outer skin, got that shape. We touched on that last week. He's now put the boot lid on the car to shape the edges of it, because the fit of the boot lid to the quarter panels wasn't very good originally, and it had also deviated slightly where we'd done the repair work to the top edges of the quarter panels in the boot aperture. There's a lap joint there which was rusting pretty badly, so we had to cut all that out and replace that, and what was already not a very good fit line then got a little bit wavy here and there. So Tom straightened that up and then adjusted the width of the boot lid just to get the fit a lot nicer than it was originally. Originally it was very different front to rear to what it was side to side. He's evened that up quite nicely now. And I think he's pretty much now just about at the point of then putting on the lower part of the new skin onto the back of the boot lid, and that'll be the boot lid pretty much finished up. Then I think he's then going to move on to the rear bumper. As I say, Matt will be going onto the bonnet, but the bonnet hinges on us, pardon the pun there, the bonnet hinges on us blasting it, because we need to blast the frame, which I think we mentioned last week. That needs a quick blast just because there's a bit of rust in that frame. There's not really a manual way of cleaning it out. We've got to do that very carefully so we don't distort it. However, we don't really want to set up our blast room just for that job, so we're going to tie that in with another job, which neatly brings in a new project. We've picked up a new project in the mix, and this is in primarily for paint only. There will be a little bit of work around that, but it's basically a paint job, and it's a pretty rare piece, this. It is a genuine Ford Sierra Cosworth 3-door shell, new old stock from Ford. It's been stored in a slightly damp barn for a long time, over 30 years, but it is a new old stock, and it is a genuine Cosworth shell. It is a Cosworth build tag on it, and it has all the correct parts to be a 3-door Cosworth shell, and we will be painting that. Now it needs a little bit of work prior to that, and I'm just going to hand over to Mark and let him show you around the shell and explain what we're doing first of all on that.
All right, welcome back to the body shop. We have a new car in, the old Cosy. So yeah, we've got this in now. I'm going to strip it down in a minute, bonnet off, get the doors off. The old whale tail is only put on for you guys to see it's a Cosy. Boot lid off, and then I'm going to give it a quick clean off in here, blow off. So good. Before blasting, obviously I've got to strip the running gear off, but I want to get all the panels bare metaled back by DA because I don't want to damage anything, because it's a new old stock shell. A lot of rust spots on it where it's been stuck in a barn since the, I think it's early 90s. So yeah, I want to get all the primer off, get it back to nice bare metal. So then when I do blast it next week, media blast, we're going to probably take a couple of days because there's a lot of pitting. Hopefully we don't find anything. There's some bits on the bottom of the doors what look a bit like there's going to be a bad bit of rust, but hopefully not. So yeah, so we'll just clean it back, blast it, hopefully get it out, epoxy prime it, start the process of painting everything. We've got the bumpers, there's quite a lot of stuff on these. So obviously we've got the bonnet vents, got the grille here, new old stock as well. Dread to think how much that's worth. So everything's got a Ford tax on one of these. So yeah, the grille, bumpers, got the plastic arches, front and rear, both sides. I did have, what else have I got in here? We've got some, look like new old stock side skirts as well. So we've got them coming like a rough, so we've got to probably DA them down, smooth them out, be all colour code. I believe this is going to be Moonstone Blue. So it's all back to original. No retro mods on this one, sorry guys. This is just a full shell restoration. Roll it, we'll go get a little running gear all done nicely for him, then it's going back to the customer. And then he'll start building it. So So yeah, so fair few weeks now of doing this for you. Well, we're waiting for our other body shells to come in from Retro Power. So yeah, see you next time.
So thank you, Mark, for that. Moving on from that, I think we're going to change projects now away from Portofino onto Wasabi, the Audi Saab. The Saab is living in the blast room at the minute, but looking a shadow of its former self. Mark has done some extremely good work on getting all that cut up, and Gaz has helped a bit as well on the work on the Audi shell. But yes, starting with the Saab, we have removed all of the extraneous bits, all of the bits we don't need. There may be still some more bits to remove that we don't need, but we've removed all the major parts, which is the entirety of the floor, the majority of the boot floor, all of the bulkhead, the front outer wings, the front inner wings, the chassis rail sections, the sill structures, pretty much all of it really. We have the outer quarters, the inner quarters, the roof frame, the B pillars, the A pillars, the front screen aperture, the main parts of the door apertures, and the front scuttle, and basically the windscreen aperture. That's all we're left with on that, and that's pretty much all we're going to need. And we're not actually going to be using the quarter panels really either, and we may not even use all of the inner quarter structure, although we are going to use some of it. But the key is we need the apertures. We need the Saab apertures because we need the doors and the glass to fit them, and that's and the roof, because the roof's quite nice to have. And even if we were going to do that in carbon fibre, it would make most sense to take a mould directly from it. But we're not. The plan is to keep, at the moment, the plan is to keep that as steel. So that's what we're doing with the Saab. And before people start telling me off, which I'm sure somebody will, for cutting up a perfectly good car, I don't know if it'll come over in the footage, but it wasn't a perfectly good car. It was pretty rusty. There were several very large holes through the bulkhead. They wouldn't have initially appeared as holes because they were like sort of peppered. But if we blasted that, there would have been holes of the order of sort of 6 inches by 4 inches through the bulkhead. The front chassis rails were completely rotten. The sills were fairly rotten. There were chunks of rot in the floor. The boot floor was pretty rotten. The front end of the car was generally very crusty. So it wasn't a perfectly good car. Yes, a restorable car undoubtedly, but if you were looking to restore a standard Saab 900, you would pick a much better start point than that particular car. However, for what we want, it's ideal because all the bits we need, give or take a couple of slight rust holes, were generally pretty good. Moving on to the Audi, and walk past its axles. As you can see, it's changed shape quite a lot. This has been quite a graft. This is an extremely strong body shell. I can't even begin to explain how tough these are. I've never looked at the crash test ratings for an Audi S4 Cabriolet, but they must be pretty damn good because it is a seriously beefy body shell. The steel thicknesses used throughout are huge. Now, I don't know if they were the same as the four-door. So a lot of structure carried from the four-door to the Cabriolet, but then there are various additions. Like I don't think the four-door has these beams inside the sills, given that the outer sill is, I think, 2mm thick steel in itself. The structure of the thing is incredible. It's extremely tough. But yeah, basically Mark and Gaz as well have been stripping all the extraneous stuff off. So they removed the outer sills, removed the A-pillars, all the outer section of the A-pillars, including the inner reinforcer section and the hinge mounts. We left these two tubes in because they carry a threaded insert that carries the dash reinforcement bar. They've removed the scuttle, the front scuttle, removed the, obviously you'd seen last week they'd removed the quarters, but now we've removed the the outer half of the arch tubs, the B-pillar structure, and down to the point where it meets the top of the sill, and the inner quarter panels. So we're now down, and then obviously again last week you saw all of the rollover structure had been removed. So we're now almost down to the bits we need. I was removing this, which I haven't finished because I've been taken away doing sort of strategic work in the background, getting things ready at the other unit and doing sort of doing plant and machinery type work, but I've nearly removed this section, which is like the transverse reinforcer that was added on the Cabriolet. That I'd like to refit. We're hoping to reuse this section but mounted in a different place. I can't reuse it, I can't keep it at the moment. I need to remove it because to do the shortening operation, which I'll elaborate on in a sec, it needs to be out of the way. That's nearly removed. I've just got a couple more welds to take out and then that can come out. One of the reasons for the difficulty in stripping this down is that a large number of the welds on this are MIG stitch welds. And I believe, I'll be corrected on this, but I believe that is down to the fact that the body shell would have originally been principally designed as a 4-door body shell, and a lot of the cabriolet parts were then add-ons and were thus not really designed to be able to be spot welded. There's no way a spot welder could reach it. There's no way the spot welder can reach most of those parts, so they were MIG stitched. So this section is largely MIG stitched. The tube reinforcer that ran across the front is largely MIG stitched. A lot of the rear quarter structure where it tied into the rollover pop-up units were MIG stitched together. There's a lot of stitch welding in the car, and that does make dismantling it quite tricky and quite time consuming. A lot of the A-pillar was MIG stitched as well. But anyway, that'll be out very shortly, and then we're into shortening. I need to add an extra support structure under the floor where the seat mountings are onto the jig, just to keep that section of the car exactly level, because it would be cantilevered off the front 4 mounts otherwise, and that's not ideal. The rear section should be self-supporting from its 4 mounts, although I may add a sled mount to that as well to allow that to slide forward and keep it supported. And then we will tie the rear beams on the jig together with some braces. You'll see all this in the future. We will tie those beams together with the braces, remove the anchors from the jig, put 2 slide mounts onto the sides of those beams so that it can only travel forwards and backwards. And then we have to work out, or I will be working out, where to unpick the centre of the structure along original panel lines wherever possible, although there will be some cuts needed. We will unpick the structure. We've got to remove, off the top of my head, I think it's 135 millimetres. It's almost exactly the same amount that we removed from the Honda Integras making the Allegros. It's about 135 millimetres, needs to be removed from the floor, but I will check that obviously. And then we need to do some dissection around the tunnel area because of the way the inner structure meets the outer structure there. That's got to be done in, I've got to modify the inner panel and modify the outer panel and then re-spot weld them back together. On the sill structure, we've got to remove a good section of this reinforcer, do some work on the inner sill, change where the original lap joint, there's an original lap joint about there on the inner sill. We'll move that lap joint forward and then just reassemble the lap joint and re-weld it together. So we shouldn't really need to be, well, we will be cutting, but actually in terms of joints, we won't be creating any new ones. We'll just be adding, moving the joint forward on the sill structure, and then we'll be putting this reinforcer back. I mean, we could take the whole reinforcer off. I probably will put a joint in that just because taking the whole thing off will cause more structural damage than just taking half of it off. But we'll just make sure the joint in that is separate from the joints on the from the original joint positions on the floor. And then once we've done all that, we hopefully then, all being well, assuming the seat has enough space, we will then be able to refit this reinforcer that was designed for the cabriolet to give some torsional rigidity to the cabriolet and to add some beam strength in crash tests, I assume. So that then hopefully can be added back in. It will be quite tight, but that's the plan there. So watch this space. That's the next stage, is the shortening on this. Once the shortening's done, we can start doing a final measure up and check, make sure we've got clearance, and then probably do the dangling section of trying to add a Saab body shell top onto the base of this Audi. So yeah, all exciting times, things moving forward. Watch for lots more heavy duty metal surgery on that one. Moving on from that, we come to the Interceptor. And on this one, there's been progress on quite a lot of quite small fronts. We mentioned last week about using the BMW E30 fuel filler neck and Bobby's work doing the press tooling to make that filler neck. And to that end, this week, I'm going to hand over to Bobby and let him talk about that because he's been doing all of the work on it, in fact, this week. So I'm going to hand over, actually, no, that's unfair. Actually, Stu did it last week. Stu's off this week, but the video will include a little bit from the tail end of last week, so there is a little bit from Stu as well. But yeah, I'm going to hand over to Bobby and let him explain the myriad of areas that he's been getting sorted out on that so that we can get it a step closer to paint.
Hello everyone, welcome to the metal shop. Bob is here again. Right, so I'll start with beginning of this week, the cooling of the engine. So I did a plumbing for the radiator top and bottom hoses. It was pretty straightforward. We just had the pre-bent 90s and I just threw them on where they should go, and it turned out a pretty neat job, though it was only one bracket I had to make on the top of the radiator, which is keeping the hose steady. So that's that. Nothing tricky. Just looking at that to remind myself of anything. The only bit was there was a slight transition on the bottom from 38 to 44 mil pipe. So I used just an exhaust expansion too, so I can expand the smaller pipe to go on the ID of the bigger one, so I can weld it neatly. So that's pretty much done. There's footage of this. The other thing was finishing the fuel filler neck, the pipes going from the fuel filler neck down to the fuel tank. Again, pretty straightforward job was that. Yeah, we just bought the hose, the fuel filler neck, and the hard hose for the BMW E30. But from this, I literally just used only the top bit where it's actually you put the gun, and the rest I just made it up and joined it to the tank. That was that. Nothing specific on this. Again, it was pretty straightforward job. Just to go a little look at this. Yeah, nothing. There's again plenty of footage. There's nothing else to show you here. That's how it looks currently with the BMW cap and all that. Also, there is no splash guard in the front of the wheels. I mean, in this part of the inner arch. So what I did is just I epoxy bonded a few L-shaped clamps on the inside of the fender, and then a couple I just welded on the inner wing and the chassis. But I went for the bonding here because there are about 8 clamps, 8 brackets. So if I was going to spot weld them, that would distort the panel, and it's just extra work and for no reason. So I used structural epoxy bonding paste, which is we use that for bonding carbon fiber to steel as well. So it's very, very strong. That's that. Just small bits like welding bosses for eventually for the brake lines going down the tunnel to the rear subframe. Just tack welded currently, and then once we have this on the rotisserie, we'll fully weld it like anything else at that stage. Just planning generally, again, brake lines planning, and just ordered bits for that. So when they turn up and when the engine is off, car up or on the rotisserie, they will have space to make, because we're going to go for hard lines. We try generally, the general vibe on this car is keep it kind of looking OEM. So everything that we're doing, we try to make it look like OEM. So brake lines, front, back, it will be hard lined. Also the brake booster, again, pipe is again all hard lined. So that's generally what we're doing, and just the customer also wanted to look as good as close as possible to OEM kind of looking car. So we don't want to go crazy with racy looking stuff. So I mean, again, probably it will be interesting for you to show you what how I do brackets which kind of look OEM. You can see these are actually, that's an extra bracket that I used for the wheel liner later for the front splash guard. So I'll show you how I do this swage, because that's just 1.6 mil. If it's just only 1.6 bend, this will be very weak, but because we have this gusset here, that makes it very strong, and for the same thickness of material. They're just leftover brackets that I've been playing or obsolete currently, and for this you just need a press, and I have exactly. So that's all you need. You need this or this, whatever material you're gonna bend, and I will bend now so you can see how the thing works. So what you do is you just have this little insert, if you wish, put it in the V. That's gonna create your swage line like that. Obviously you need the top punch to be spaced so it's kind of swaging around it. Right, yeah, just if you put it roughly in the middle. So what you do is just put your piece, if you want to bend it again, make sure that the piece is in the middle of this recess. And then bend it, and there you go. You have perfect swage line, and it's much stronger. So I use that technique for small bracketry. We're on that stage right now where there's not much to show on the camera because they're just small bits here and there and stuff, and making small brackets like this and trying to make everything work together. So that's what we are currently. The other thing I want to measure also, I've never seen actually before, is when you do hard lines. I mean, if you do hard lines for brakes, it's pretty thin stuff, so you can say use a steel welding rod or aluminum welding rod, a bit thinner, so you can get your shapes and then copy that when you bend your pipes. But when you do anything from 3/8, ½ inch, 5/8, everything that size, and when you want to be quite kind of very close to bulkheads or go around other components, you want to be very precise with your bends. And if you have one wire which is 3 mil, it's difficult to show you the actual route, and when it's clamped also it clamps the spacing from the bulkheads and everything. So what I use is, this is probably the machinists know this is for coolant pipe, which is usually you can find it on any metalworking machines for cooling. So because it's flexible, you can shape, and it keeps its shape very good. So and pretty much the radius of the bend is what our general radius of our bending tools are. So it's pretty much 1-to-1. So say if you're in tight space or you want to see the whole pipe how it's going to look, you can make any sort of bends in any direction, and that thing keeps the shape. You can also, because this is about ½ inch, I think, OD 5/8. So yeah, you can even use the actual clamps that is going to clamp the final piece. So you can, I've got more of them, and the thing is there, you buy them on a ½ meter length. You can join them, so you can have 5 meters if you wish from this, and you can see you can over it in place. You can check it. You can see actually visually if you're happy with the final design. And what you do, you just measure your centers and bend the pipe to suit. And then, yeah, so that's how I did you've seen on the previous video, the transmission cooling lines and the brake booster as well. The brake booster is again very tricky shape, but with this thing you just have the actual piece, but it's kind of a mock-up. So yeah, that's how I make my life easier, and pretty much zero waste, because if you have something which is against the bulkhead and then something here, one wrong bend, that's going to be either too long or too short, so you're wasting a good meter from the material. So that's small techniques that I'm using. But yeah, pretty much that's it. Yeah, that's end of the week now. I'll be away next week, but we're going through very, very small jobs and just go and make sure that everything is up to our standard. And yeah, I think I'll stop here, and I'll see you next time, and have fun.
Yeah, so thank you for that, Bobby. And I think at that point, it's probably going to be time to hand over to Cal in the assembly shop, and also to take you down to the den. So see you in a week's time. Thank you very much, Nat. And I'm going to start with the Tango Orange, or Kubota Orange, as has been mentioned a few times, Allegro. So in preparation for Alex doing the rope mock-up wiring harness for measuring up purposes, Jim has started getting a lot of the components, particularly ones that relate to electrical devices, into the car. So he's got the steering column in, which actually he just rebuilt and reassembled both of the steering columns after they'd been stripped down and repainted. But yeah, steering column in, pedal boxes in. He's got the heat AC unit all bolted into place, because that obviously has various electrical electrical connections on it. He's in the process of getting the wiper mechanism in. So that's a Lucas good old-fashioned kind of rack in a tube Lucas setup, motor mounted in the engine bay, and then the tube goes back into the scuttle area. And that's why we've got those two big access panels on the front of the scuttle, is so we can get in there to fit all that into place and then bolt those panels in afterwards. However, it's still not an easy job, which I think is why he was on it the other day and, and then went off it to something else, I think because he needed refreshed patience with it. But yes, he's getting the wiper motor into place. And then he's going to be progressing through various other components. He's actually also got in the PDMs, power distribution modules, that is. In fact, PMUs, as ECU Master call them, and the engine ECU, and they're down in the footwell there on the bracketry that Bobby designed and did all the mounts for in the metalwork stage. We've also got the central locking controller in here. There's the H-bridge module, which is another ECU Master device. That is the device that does the polarity reversal control for the electric windows. So that is basically requested via CAN bus from the PDM after you press the window switches, obviously, and that does the polarity reversal, but to flick the motor up or down. I think there's one more thing over there as well, but I can't remember what it is. Oh, there is a relay box. We've just got a couple of fuses and relays on this for the permanently live circuits. Because of the way the ECU Master PDMs work, you have to have a live connection to wake the PDM up, which means that anything you want to be active when the PDM is not woken up, essentially, needs to have a permanent fuse feed to it. So that's where we're at with that. Also on Allegro, the brake lines. So Anthony has been working on all of the brake flexi lines, which is throughout. So we're doing all the brake plumbing with Teflon lined, stainless braided with stainless threaded fitting hoses throughout. Again, Bobby mocked all this up at the dry build stage, photographed it all, so it's getting everything into place, getting everything trimmed to exactly the right lengths, marking the orientation of the fittings, and then all of that lot comes off again to have, because they're swage type fittings, to have the swages crimped on them and then have them pressure tested and then sent back. So there was a massive stack of those hoses, basically all of the brake lines for this car, all of the brake lines for this car, and actually some of the brake lines for Project Churchill lurking over there as well, which I'll come on to a little bit in a minute. But going back to the Allegro up there, also Matt has been working on the fabrication of the boxes that sit each side of the boot. So when we did the metalwork on the cars, we made provision for where the battery and the amplifier for the audio system were going to mount. And we left a rectangular aperture each side of the boot into which we were going to have a fabricated box drop in and bolt in. But Bobby never actually got as far as making the boxes themselves. He just knew that there was space, he planned the space for them. So Matt has been fabricating those boxes. They're done now, so they're going to go away and be painted or coated in some fashion. And then once they're back, they'll be bolted in with a little foam gasket underneath them so water can't ingress into the boot. And then on the near side, the battery bolts in there. On the off side, the Audison Forza amp that's powering the audio system. Obviously, both cars having the same audio system, which is a combination of that Audison Forza amp, the little DRC controller, which is just quite a neat rotary volume controller that controls the volume, a Bluetooth receiver, which is an Audison Beacon off the top of my head, and that's connected to the amp via a very short optical cable, so it basically remains completely digital, so there's not the opportunity for analog interference to be introduced if you're using RCA cables or whatever. And then we're using Morel speakers throughout, so we've got Morel Virtus Nanos in the doors on these, which are these incredibly slim, very high quality speakers, a lot of sound output and very high definition considering how little space they take up. Tweeters in the dash, and then 6x9 Morel speakers in the parcel shelf. And one of the cool things about the Audison stuff is it's a multi-channel amp, lots of outputs, and we're actually directly driving each individual driver off a separate channel on the amp. So the tweeters, for instance, are just 2 additional channels off the amp. So rather than using an analog crossover to split the low and high frequencies, you program that into the amplifier. So basically there's a piece of software you plug into the amp with a laptop, and you can choose the exact frequency cutoffs for each individual channel, as well as obviously the levels for all those channels. So it's a very nice bit of kit. So I think that's probably covered most of the Allegro stuff. There's also all of the powder coated parts for the second car, so that one, this one, have come back now, and also all of the fasteners that we've had plated. So we left all of the mechanical Integra parts together for the second car whilst we stripped and refurbished all the parts for the first car, on the basis that it left us the second set of components assembled for reference. Now we've got all the first set of components reassembled, we then stripped the second set down so we could use the first set as reference, if that makes sense. So Anthony is just about to start the build-up of all of the Integra suspension mechanicals so we can get this car to the same stage as that one, which is basically rolling. I mean, that, if we just bolted wheels on that, that would be rolling now. And then going back to Churchill, we talked about the fact that brake lines of being mocked up and crimped, and it's George who's been doing that. Now George is a new George. This is not George Mears, our designer from upstairs. This is George Sinclair, who's a new recruit. Eagle-eyed viewers might have spotted him about 3 months ago when he did a trial he did 3 days I think it was as a trial. He was working on Project Kuma actually at the time. Went really well, we were very keen, but he needed to sort of phase out work at his previous employer. Then he wanted some time out to do various things he wanted to do, including a road trip through Europe in what is now his daily car, which is, I think he said, a 67 Ford, not a Falcon, what is it? Galaxy, which is so cool. It's just a ridiculously cool American car. Got this beautiful sweeping kind of fastback roof on it. Yeah, I mean, you'd probably say we'd employ him just on the strength of that alone. but the man is also very capable, and I'm sure we're going to see a lot of him over the coming weeks and months. So he's been working on Churchill, got all the brake lines crimped up. He's also been fitting the rear parts of the exhaust system, handbrake cables going in as well, just chipping away at the underside assembly jobs, upper wishbones as well. We've finally got rid of those cut and shut temporary upper suspension arms in it and put these Island coated machine arms that we've had made, so it's got the proper suspension arms on it now. So yeah, we're kind of moving forwards to that being in a position of being rolling as well. So we've got several cars actually on the brink of being rolling. Just come this way actually, I'll have a quick look at Project Kuma to refresh my memory. So I swing by actually the Redux BMWs, which are just out of shot here, reminded me that Richard's also been on with the headlining of that, and I thought I'd just include that because he's been away on holiday. There's not a lot of upholstery stuff to cover, so mentioning that he's done the Alcantara headlinings in those. Yeah, Project Kuma, we saw the interior bits come back the other week, and then last week we saw all of the gunmetal anodizing parts come back. So Gibbo's been taking full advantage of that and getting stuff fitted. So door cards are now completely in with the pull handles, which are leather handles with the little anodized finishes on the end. The rest of the door furniture, so the window winders and release handles, are ready to bolt in. But yeah, they look really good. I love how they've turned out with that kind of blue-grey perforated strip, which ties in with the seats, which you'll see going in very soon. Got the instruments in. They're from Mental Block, Speed Hut. Same on Project One. The only thing we've done that strays from their standard range is that we took the aluminium bezels off and had them anodized to custom colour. And then the heater controls, which control the vintage air HVAC system that's in these cars, which we've done our own machine surround for that with some different kind of symbols for the adjustments that just look a little bit more in keeping with the rest of the instrumentation and logos on this car. And then they've been doing some work in the boot. So when we did the sort of development phase on Project One, we were unhappy with the resonance in the boot floor, so we bonded some folded aluminium ribs across it, which we've now duplicated on this car. Got all of the Dynamat and Dynaliner in the boot, so boot is pretty much ready to fit out. We've just got to put the carpet in, the panel on the back of the fuel tank. You saw Alex buttoning up the fuel sender programming last week. Funny enough, I saw a comment, I haven't got it loaded up ready, but there was a comment from somebody who said, oh yeah, those ATL fuel senders, yeah, I battled away for ages, must have tried calibrating it about 20 times and then it just randomly worked. Well, that's more or less our experience. I don't really understand it. Once they're calibrated, they're absolutely spot on, but for whatever reason, it seems like you go round and round in circles. And on Project One, it was a major problem because it appeared we had calibrated it, and then we put the fuel tank back in and filled it with fuel and then found it wasn't calibrated. So it was on this one, we were being a bit more wary and making sure we were definitely calibrated properly before fitting the tank, which is done and now in. And then I've been just on the early stages of the carbon bonnet for this. So that was something we've been waiting for a while, actually. There was a bit of a hold up on producing those. So I'm on the process of trimming the inner to get it to sit nicely in the outer. I'm then going to bolt the inner to the hinges, get that all aligned properly on the car, do the provision for where the pin attaches it to the striker at the front there, get everything in place, get the buffer sorted on it, then slip the outer over, make sure everything fits properly, and then it's going to be preparing to bond the inner and outer together. And then once that's all bonded, I'll hand it over to Gaz and Mark and Steve, and they will prep the outside for the turquoisey colour that's on here, and the inside will get a matte lacquer over the visible weave which stays visible. And then we've got to do the same process on the boot, and I think that will coincide fairly well with having the interior finished and getting the car pretty close to testing at that point. George has been on with the column shroud in this, so that's George Mears, upstairs CAD George. 3D print trial is in there, he's been doing a few tweaks and changes to that. And then the biggie was last week we showed the Saab, and we were kind of tearing our hair out a bit about the sort of resolution of the quarters at the back, trying to resolve the shape of them nicely. And I think I alluded to the fact that we were kind of on the brink of a bit of a breakthrough. And sure enough, yeah, by the end of Friday last week, we were in a position where we were really happy. We'd kind of scrapped the big vent idea completely, carried on the sharp body line, tapered the arch shape back into the back of the car. And then because we've got the sharp fold line higher up than standard, because the arches sit higher, it no longer intersects the bottom of the boot lid, so we've introduced a slight swage line, a style line across the boot lid that's just a couple of inches probably further up than the bottom to carry that line on at the back. And then the vent is now essentially an extrusion of the shape of the rear tail light straight out into the quarter to create a sort of tapered double triangle shaped vent. Now there's still a few details, things like the lights, spoiler, bumper, a few little details to iron out to get the shape and everything working perfectly together and looking balanced. But I think in terms of the fundamental shape of the rear quarter, we are there now, so happy with that. And then Luke, what's Luke been on with? I'm having a total mental block now. Quattro. So you'll see this in a minute down in the den. The short wheelbase Quattro we were involved with quite a few years ago. It's back for a whole load of revisions, suspension upgrades, brake upgrades, etc. One of the things we wanted to do on that is introduce some nice grills into the bumpers, because it always had some bits of mesh in the uppers, just some open sort of holes in the bottom. So we've tidied up the apertures on the bumpers a little bit, then 3D scanned them, and then Luke has been on with designing what is going to be 3D printed grills that sit into the apertures on both bumpers. So that's going to be exciting to see that take shape and kind of look proper for the first time since that car was built many years ago. So he's been on with that, and what's the other thing? I think I'm going to have to leave it at that. I know he's been on with something else, but my mental capacity is shot, so I'm going to take the opportunity to go down the den and see what's been going on down there. Welcome back to the den, and let's go and see what's going on. So Nick's been away for a couple of weeks, and now he's back in the workshop. It's absolutely manic, all systems go. As you can see, we've now exploded all of the bunker toolbox and storage units extensively around the workshop, hence the massive pile of cardboard and polystyrene over in the corner. You'll also notice that Martin has been busy over here, started to construct our detailing booth, which we'll be transforming over the course of the next week or so. We're just about to start getting all the cladding in there. The little sort of vertical strips will be colour adjustable LED lights. And when I say colour adjustable, I don't mean that garish disco effect you can get with this sort of stuff, but I mean changing the tone of the white light, because that's going to be our paint surface analysis lighting. And then in the ceiling there's going to be a suspended ceiling with big diffused light panels, so we've basically got the option to do massive flood lighting in there for being able to see a car well, to actually clean it up to a good standard, and then we can turn that off and put the little strips on which give you the reflections you can study to actually analyse the surface of the paint. So that's that. You'll also notice Project Utah, which is very nice to see back in the workshop. There's a good series on YouTube we did about this, start to finish. I think it might have been 15, 16 episodes. I think we finished this 2 years ago maybe. owner continues to be extremely happy with it. Just basically come back for some maintenance work, and because he's left it here while he's away on holiday, we're going to have this here for a few weeks, which means we will be showing this off also at the launch party on the 21st of September. So if you've always wanted to see what this car looks like in person, come along and take a look. Going to have a wander over here, and we've got a couple of cars in storage in here now, which actually tees me up nicely to say if you want to speak to us about storing your car, then get in touch. One of them I'm going to dwell on briefly, in fact a couple I'm going to mention. This is one of my own cars. Don't often talk about our own cars. Some of the long-term viewers might have seen my RA28 Celica, which is at my house, but one of the cars that's been lurking in storage in various units over the years is this E30 Touring. So what I wanted to do with this was create something that had the same sort of performance power-wise as a 325, but be a little bit more nimble, weight in a better place. So I've got the 4-cylinder 16-valve 1800 in it that you would get in a 318 IS, but they never officially did that in the Touring. And then that's on Genvi throttle bodies, DTA management, so it's essentially putting out the same power as a 325. But lighter, better weight distribution. Unfortunately, like most of my cars, most of my time is spent on other people's cars and running the business, so I have very, very little time to work on it myself. So although it really only needs the interior putting together and a couple of minor mechanical jobs, it's only needed that for about the last 2 years. So hopefully at some point, maybe this year or next year, I'll actually get to drive this again, so that would be lovely. And then the Stratos I'm going to mention briefly. I may have mentioned before that this is actually for sale. There is a fantastic video and photo shoot been done of this by the Keep collection. If you look on the description below, I'll put a link into their website and to their Instagram so you can see that media of this car. But yeah, it really does show it in a great light. They spent a day basically thrashing it around Snowdonia, and have got some just incredible video and photograph footage of the car being used in the day. So if you want to see footage of this being thrashed, which we've never shown, then go on and check out that footage. Let's have a look upstairs, see what Richard's been up to. We've obviously already seen in the main workshop, he was working on the headliners for the Redux M3 projects. But alongside that, he's also been on with some Allegro work. So headliner, we're going with very 70s bog standard white vinyl headliners in them both. He's working on the sun visors. Inevitably on these cars that have been loitering around since the 1970s, the foam that goes into things like the sun visors just kind of becomes brittle and falls apart. So they're completely stripped down, just down to the metal frames. Richard then completely remakes the structure of it. What did you use, like a bit of solid board in there? I can't remember. Yeah.
Multiple, so
Yeah.
bit of cord, bit of plasticized foam.
Coming really close, so you're on my microphone, by the way. I don't want to hug you.
Okay, I'll have a hug. Bit of cord, bit of foam, bit of recessing, because this is the original.
Yeah.
Then that all fills the layers. That gives it its rigidness. That gives it the squidginess, and then.
Oh, and the glue gives you the trip. But yeah, basically a complete reconstruction of those, and then they'll be stitched up, hand stitched with white vinyl to match the headlining. And then he's also been on with the seat components. So if you swizz around this way, actually conveniently on our leather horse is the fabric we're using. So this is on the orange Allegro. We're using this Porsche check fabric on the centres of the seats, and then this, which may look black in the video, but it's a very, very dark navy blue, which I think is also a Porsche colour. So that's kind of, this dark blue leather's kind of adding a touch of class into what is, we're trying to still maintain to be quite a 70s look on the interior. Quite a nice mirroring of the other car, which has also got a check cloth on the seats, leather side bolsters, but just different colour combinations, and I think that's going to work really well with the orange. So very excited to see that come together. And the last thing really to talk about is what is looming quickly, the official launch party here on the 21st of September. Had a massive amount of interest in that. It's all becoming quite real now that we've pretty much organised a car show. Continuing to get applications via the website, thedentautomotive.co.uk. it's looking like a pretty cool day, and because the turnout now is looking reasonably sizable, we're trying to make it as entertaining as possible. So we're going to have a lot of things going on outside. We're going to have food, drink, a massive display of cars, 70 cars, which we'll be emailing out the owners of those cars that we're inviting very shortly. And we're also going to have the man who is sat next to me presenting the day. He's going to be doing various interviews with myself and the other guys at the den, and no doubt chatting about cars, which is what we do best, isn't it?
Yes, we'll be talking a lot about cars because that is the nature of this beast. So I can't wait. I can't wait to come to the opening day of the den. I've come today for a little snoop around to see you guys putting the finishing touches on the place. Yeah, it's great. It's very enjoyable.
We've got a posh facade on the fact that we're just mucking around with cars, really. But
It is. I can reveal exclusively that these speakers behind me and this amplifier here were mine, and I gifted them to you.
you did.
Because frankly, I didn't need them. and
I haven't tried them. They probably don't work.
No, they do. They do. They absolutely work. They were mine for many years, so I'm very proud of them. But I think it goes well with the lounge vibe going on up here. So yeah, can't wait to see all the cars filling up outside there. A lot of the project cars from the past that you guys have put together from Retro Power. It's never a chore to see any of those cars coming back, and meeting people, frankly, and coffee.
Yes.
It's quite an important aspect.
Beer.
Oh yeah, and it's a beer. Yeah, so coffee, possibly beer going on. So yeah, it's going to be really good fun.
Yeah, we'll see you all on the 21st.